The following content depicts found footage, audio recordings, and assembled files. The events, locations, and individuals depicted are fictional to ensure anonymity. Viewer discretion is advised. Share your experiences and reactions in the comments. They may be used in future studies of unexplained phenomena.
The Screaming Plains. The plane left me in a field of burnt gold. Heat shimmered over the endless plains, distorting the horizon like a mirage. Breathing. I had come here for sound, for the raw, unfiltered roar of lions beneath the African sun. My equipment felt heavy on my shoulders, but heavier still was the silence that seemed to swallow every step I took. The camp was small, 3 tents, a generator wheezing by a rusted jeep, and a few local guides who watched me with unreadable expressions. They warned me about the echo beast, a voice hunter that repeats what it hears until it becomes real. I smiled politely. Science, I told myself, not superstition. But that night, when the insects faded and the world turned silver under the moon, the stillness deepened. It wasn't empty, it listened. I could feel it pressing close, waiting. Then, from far across the grasslands, something whispered my name. By dawn, I convinced myself it had been the wind. Still, I began recording immediately, setting up microphones along the termite mounds and watering holes. The lions were distant, their roars layered with the rhythmic pulse of the savannah. Beautiful, primal, alive. Later, reviewing the audio, I noticed something faint beneath the roars of voice. Not animal, not static. It repeated words we'd said at lunch. Fragments of laughter, my own comment about the heat. The guides exchanged wary glances. One of them whispered, "Do not answer if you hear yourself." That night, I played back the files again. Among the hisses of wind and rustle of grass, I heard my own voice. "I'm lost," it said. But I had never spoken those words. We divided the work to cover more ground. My assistant, Daniel, stayed close, checking the gain levels while I walked further with the parabolic mic. The air was heavy, a vibrating tension just below hearing range. Each gust of wind seemed to carry something almost human. When I analyzed the frequencies, the results made no sense. The tonal patterns, the pitch, the inflection matched my own recorded speech perfectly. Every cadence, every pause, something out there was speaking in my voice. Dread replaced curiosity. I muted the speakers and listened directly through the headphones. The plains murmured with layered voices, rising and falling like a sea of whispers. Then, from the tall grass ahead, Daniel's voice called my name. But Daniel was still standing beside me. The first light crept across the plains, pale and cold. One of the guides called me over, pointing at a patch of earth behind the tents. Tracks deep impressions in the dust, not paw prints, not boots. They were shaped like something walking upright, but wrong in proportion, as if made by an echo of a step rather than the step itself. I ignored their whispers and returned to my recordings. Every lion's roar from the night before was followed by something faint, a mirrored sound trailing half a second behind higher pitch, questioning tone. I began cataloging them. Response a 1, a 2, a 3. I was sure of it now. I had found evidence of a new vocal phenomenon, a new species, perhaps. When I slowed one of the files, my own breathing echoed back through the headphones, not delayed, synchronized. It exhaled when I did. And by noon, I had a theory. Mimicry as adaptation. The creature, whatever it was, absorbed patterns through repetition, speech, rhythm, tone. The more we recorded, the more it learned. It was, in a way, a reflection of our presence. The guides refused to assist further. They packed what they could and begged me to stop. The more it hears, they said, the closer it comes. But curiosity is its own hunger. I stayed. That night, I heard voices outside the tent. My voice among them. Phrases I had spoken hours earlier, twisted slightly the same, but wrong. I played the recorder back to confirm, and a final phrase emerged, crisp and immediate. "Can I come in?" The sandstorm struck without warning. The air turned opaque, sand biting skin and static bursting through every radio channel. We ran blind, clutching at the equipment, but much of it vanished into the storm. Hours later, silence returned to natural, heavy. When we retrieved what remained, some of the recovered recorders contained voices I didn't recognize. Men, women, laughter. One of the guides whispered a name someone who had vanished years ago. The locals said the planes remember sound. That night, I found a new file on my device, time-stamped from that same storm. I pressed play. My voice came through. "Calma Nia, don't look outside." I was alone when it was recorded. The night pressed against the fabric of my tent, the wind whispering like breath. Then I heard it, someone calling for help. My own voice, raw, desperate. The guides froze, then bolted into the dark. I stayed, trembling, clutching the recorder as if it could anchor me to reality. "Who are you?" I whispered into the mic. The reply came before I finished speaking. "Who are you?" Same cadence, same breath, but reversed its question preceded mine. I replayed the audio, and the pattern was unmistakable. The creature hadn't answered. It had spoken first. A hand-shaped shadow passed across the tent wall. My own voice began to hum, just outside the canvas. A lullaby I hadn't sung since childhood. Sleep was impossible. The air itself vibrated with whispers my words, twisted through unseen throats. By dawn, I understood. It wasn't imitation. It was conversation, anticipation. Each sound it made aligned with thought, not speech, as if it heard what I would say before I did. I stepped outside, recorder in hand. The plains glimmered silver under the moonlight. Ten primera, sadobluit, motion within stillness. A shape quivering in the tall grass, its surface alive with sound waves. Vibrating faces forming and collapsing in a rhythm of breath. I asked, "What are you?" It opened its mouth. Every word I had ever spoken poured out at once. The final tape begins with static. Then my breathing, then silence. My voice follows, fragmented, as if pulled through sand. Testing, ... 1.2. The words distort, multiply. Dozens of versions of me overlap, whispering field notes, laughter, apologies. I tried to speak again, but nothing came. My lips obeyed, my throat tightened. The sound belonged elsewhere now. In the recording, my voice continues without me, describing what it sees the plains, endless, shimmering with voices. I left the recorder running and walked toward the sound of myself calling for help. "If you hear me, ... double quotes a pause. Don't answer." The hollow heard. The sun baked the savannah into a canvas of gold and dust as I stepped from the jeep. My veterinarian bag felt unervingly light, though I had carried the weight of expectations and years of study. In the distance, the herd was already there. A frozen array of shapes, heads raised, limbs rigid. None moved, not a flicker of an eye, not a twitch of an ear. The rangers avoided looking directly at them, muttering words I didn't fully catch. "Hollow herd," one whispered. "Curse of the plains." Skepticism warred with unease in my chest. I set up cameras, thermal scanners, and audio recorders. The herd's silence was absolute, almost sentient, a vacuum pressing against the open plains. Hours passed in still observation. Then, abruptly, one antelope shifted its head toward me. The motion was swift, unnatural. I froze, certain it would look at me with curiosity or awareness. But its eyes were empty, glassy, unseeing, hollow. I began systematic documentation. The herd arranged itself across the plain in precise geometric patterns, distances, and alignments, impossible to explain by wind, terrain, or chance. The air felt held in suspension, thick with anticipation. I approached a single antelope to tag it. Careful, slow, scientific. Nothing happened. It did not flinch or respond. I circled it, tried gestures and subtle sounds, but the body remained a perfect statue, as though observing me while ignoring entirely that I existed. Then I heard it, a faint cracking from one of the distant forms, subtle yet audible. Something shifted inside the antelope, a dry, hollow sound resonating through the still air. Binoculars and thermal imaging revealed the truth. Internal movement within the rigid form. Cautiously, I approached, each step measured. The thermal scan showed strange patterns, fluid motions that suggested life, yet skeletal lines were absent. The shell alone maintained shape, flexing in mimicry of a living creature. A shiver ran down my spine. What I had assumed alive, natural, was not alive in the conventional sense. The hollow anatomy challenged every preconception. Suddenly, behind the tent, a cracking, hollow noise echoed closer. My pulse quickened. I held my breath, realizing the anomaly was nearer than I had anticipated. Dusk softened the plains into muted shades of amber and gray. From my elevated position, I watched the herd move, not individually, but as one entity, aligning with precise, geometric formations, circles, spirals, and angles, shapes that made sense only from above. My mind struggled to reconcile biology with mathematics. Occasionally, a shell split along a seam, producing a wet, subtle cracking sound. Nothing emerged from it, just the hollow structure, flexing unnaturally. I noted each pattern, hypothesizing some collective biological intelligence guiding them. The stillness of the air pressed against my ears, broken only by these soft, hollow noises. As twilight deepened, one shell detached fully. The interior was empty, nothing holding its shape. I stepped back, realizing the herd's replication process had a limit, yet operated with eerie precision. That night, equipment malfunctioned. Cameras blinked off. Recorders hissed. I investigated, flashlight cutting through the darkness. On the ground were hoof-like prints, but the impressions held odd textures, like suction cups or soft pads. Nothing alive should have made them. Every shadow seemed to twitch with intention. Then, near the tents, I glimpsed a form, antelope-shaped, low to the ground, blending with darkness. The moment my eyes met it, it froze, perfectly still. Blinking made it disappear, yet I felt it there, observing. A creeping unease gnawed at me. Replicas were no longer confined to the plains. They had entered our camp. Reviewing footage, I realized the herd was producing biological copies, shell-encased and adaptive. Each new form replicated the natural perfectly, adjusting to terrain, wind, and human presence. Distinguishing reality from replication became impossible. One replica moved independently near a tent, its shell reflecting moonlight. I froze as its hollow eyes glimmered with a strange awareness, as though watching me intentionally. Science and fear collided. The herd was not only alive, it was evolving, infiltrating, and learning. The night storm arrived with sudden ferocity, whipping tents and equipment. Rain drummed against the canvas, but the sound inside my tent was secondary to the cracking outside. Shells ruptured violently, sending hollow echoes into the night. My heart pounded as I watched silhouettes move through the rain replicas. Free from their structured herd, they copied me with disturbing precision. My posture, my hesitant movements, even the rhythm of my breathing. Panic clawed at my chest. The herd was on T, just observing. They were learning, adapting, and invading. My fingers trembled around the recorder as I whispered, testing their response. A hollow form pressed against the tent wall. It echoed my voice perfectly. Every nuance, every hesitation repeated in a cold, hollow resonance. I recoiled, realizing that the herd's replication was intimate to the point of violating identity itself. I stepped outside, drenched and shivering, confronting the flooded field. The moonlight revealed the terrifying extent. Identical hollow shells stretched across the plain, their surfaces shimmering faintly with moisture. Somewhere have formed, struggling to maintain their shapes, twitching unnaturally as if learning through trial. Fear collided with a clinical fascination. Each form mirrored and adapted faster than I could react. I circled, documenting, Heart hammering, then a shell opened nearby, unnervingly slow. Inside was a replica of myself, crouched, staring without expression. Recognition and horror fused. The herd was no longer just antelopes, they were mechanisms of replication, intelligence, and imitation, all focused on survival and expansion. I left the equipment behind, leaving only the recorder running as I retreated. My notes were fragmented, captured in short bursts. Geometric arrangements forming around the camp, impossible angles. A choreography of hollow forms. Each shell seemed aware, observing, marking territory, responding to human presence with precision. The herd was no longer confined to the plains. They could imitate, infiltrate, and replicate endlessly. I walked into the savannah, leaving the recorder behind, a witness to the unfolding phenomenon. If you see one, don't assume it's what it seems. Under the dune, the heat of the Kalahari waned as twilight folded into night. Our small crew unpacked cameras and lights, setting tripods with meticulous care, their shadows stretching across endless dunes. The sand shifted subtly underfoot, a quiet vibration that seemed to resonate with the vast emptiness around us. I crouched, noting patterns in the subtle tremors, the way the earth beneath our boots seemed to pulse faintly. Our local guides, faces etched with caution, warned of things that lived beneath the sand, creatures that sensed motion, heartbeats, and fear. My team laughed at the stories, chalking them up to desert superstition, but I couldn't shake a lingering unease. As I checked the thermal camera feed, a distortion caught my eye. A ripple passed beneath the sand fluid, deliberate, not wind, not an animal's surface movement. The camera amplified the anomaly. The sand shifted as if something beneath it was breathing, alive, aware. The desert was quiet, save for the hum of our generators and the whispered cautions from guides. I leaned closer to the monitor, heart accelerating, mesmerized by the subtle but unmistakable movement beneath us. The thermal feed flickered, and the ripples surged forward, a pulse imperceptibly aligned with my heartbeat. Footage review became obsession. The sand's ripple responded in startling synchrony with our heartbeats. A deep, shivering vibration coursed through the dunes whenever a crew member's pulse quickened. At first, I assumed it was some natural phenomenon, a large subterranean lizard or snake. But the motion was erratic, intelligent, reactive. It was tracking us, not randomly moving. The crew grew uneasy. Jokes came out, strained. Laughter, hollow. One camera operator muttered, "I feel like it knows when we're scared." I nodded silently, gripping my notebook, jotting observations. Every twitch of my pulse, every skipped beat, seemed to echo through the sand. We tested our own movements, standing still, jumping, breathing slowly, accelerating our pace. The anomaly adapted. It reacted not just to pressure or vibration, but to our physiological states. The desert felt sentient. A predator, as much mental as physical. Then, abruptly, the sand trembled beneath my feet, matching the cadence of my heartbeat precisely. A chill ran through me. Panic flared. I wanted to run, but I knew every quickened step would betray me. The desert wasn't simply home to wildlife. It was hunting us, learning, feeding off fear, and each pulse resonated with its awareness. Dunes shifted as we moved closer, each step sending tremors that the creature beneath immediately mirrored. The sand behaved unnaturally, forming depressions and ridges that weren't caused by wind or terrain. It became evident. The predator wasn't surface-bound. It sensed us, detected our heartbeats, our fear, our hesitation. I realized with growing dread that panic itself was dangerous. Each jump or hasty movement drew the creature nearer. We slowed, trying to control breathing, to regulate pulse. Cameras captured a surreal choreography, our combined physiological rhythms, eliciting patterns of movement in the sand. The crew whispered in awe and terror, but words betrayed them. I noticed a tremor that wasn't just under our feet. It was perfectly in sync with my own heartbeat. The realization slammed into me. This predator responded directly to the intimate measure of life within us. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet moving meant feeding it. Every anxious glance, every rapid breath, allowed the desert to inch closer, to read us, to hunt, and beneath our feet, a vibration pulsed, unrelenting, perfectly attuned to the rhythm of my heart. The desert night had settled like a heavy blanket, suffocating and endless. The crew huddled near the flickering light of the cameras, their shadows stretching long across the dunes. The narrator, notebook in hand, tried to record observations without adding panic to the collective pulse. Each step, each breath seemed to resonate beneath the sand, sending tremors far too precise to be natural. He experimented carefully. He slowed his breathing, lowered his heart rate deliberately, and noticed a subtle reduction in the small undulations the sand seemed to produce. Even his pulse, when controlled, seemed to calm the desert's restless floor. The others were skeptical. One crew member leaned close and whispered, "It's just the ground settling." Right, but the narrator could feel the rhythm in his chest, the tiny feedback loop forming. Fear accelerated the vibrations. Calmness slowed them. He tried explaining it, gesturing to the faint ridges shifting under moonlight, but the words barely reached anyone. Anxiety spread faster than logic, and each nervous twitch, each shiver, only amplified the underground movements. Then, almost predictably, a teammate yelped in fright at a snapping twig. The sand roared beneath them, trembling violently, as though the desert itself had taken offense to their panic. The narrator grabbed the team, insisting they freeze. Breath held, pulse slowed, fighting the primal reaction to flee. The desert hummed in a deep, resonant counterpoint, threatening and alive. Movement became a liability. The narrator realized they were no longer just observers. Every heartbeat and trembling muscle was a signal, an invitation to whatever lurked below. They tried to edge towards safety, step by careful step, but the sand reacted instantly to their fear. It shivered, rose in small waves, and occasionally the ripples formed slight depressions, as if something massive was moving just beneath, following the pulses it could sense. Each crew member's panic caused localized tremors, making their escape exponentially more dangerous. The narrator understood then the terrifying truth. This predator did not chase them in conventional terms. It did not need to see, smell, or hear in any normal sense. Fear itself was the bait, the lure that guided it. Trying to run only accelerated its approach. One crew member, already trembling uncontrollably, gasped and stumbled. The ground shivered violently, a deep, resonant quiver under their feet. In the next moment, a section of sand collapsed entirely beneath them, swallowing them into a brief, terrifying void. The narrator lunged to grab the edge of the sand, but there was nothing to hold. The scream cut off abruptly, replaced by a silence that felt louder than the tremors themselves. The desert had claimed a pulse, and the crew could feel the emptiness where it had been. A hole in both ground and spirit. Sweat streamed down the narrator's face as he reviewed thermal imagery from the cameras. The predator was enormous, but hidden completely beneath the sand. Its form seemed flexible, stretching beneath the dunes, adjusting instantly to avoid visual detection while remaining entirely guided by the vibrations above. The intelligence inferred was unlike any terrestrial predator. It reacted to heart rate changes, to trembling fingers brushing against sand, to the thundering terror of a racing mind. Fear was literally sustenance, every shiver a meal, every rapid heartbeat a song it could trace. The narrator attempted to calm himself, slowing his pulse, measuring it in time with his own breath, willing the sand to remain still. He realized the predator had adapted to irregularities in rhythm, anticipating sudden bursts of adrenaline. In every way, it was a biological inversion. Prey could no longer flee through speed or stealth. Only mental control mattered. The desert became a laboratory for terror, the dunes responding, flexing, transmitting subtle feedback of each crew member's internal panic. He noticed, with a rising panic of his own, that his pulse had begun to accelerate involuntarily. The sand beneath his feet trembled violently in perfect sync with the spikes in his heartbeat. The predator knew. It was aware, and it was waiting, patient and unstoppable, for any lapse in control that might betray him. Word count 1054. Chapter 7 Confrontation. The desert night pressed down like a physical weight. Every tremor beneath my feet carried a calculated menace. I had learned the only way to slow the predator was to slow myself, to reduce my heartbeat to a near whisper. I froze, breath shallow, hands gripping the camera tripod for stability, eyes darting to crew members who fidgeted nervously beside me. The sand stilled almost immediately around my position, a tense silence that set nerves on edge. I could hear my own heartbeat thumping in my ears, each beat a countdown to potential violence. One crew member gasped, their panic vibrating through the ground in a shockwave the predator could detect. The sand rippled violently where they had stood moments before. The predator, attuned to emotional rhythm, was learning and responding faster than we could manage. I tried to instruct the others, whispering, "Stillness. Control yourselves." Few understood in time. Tremors surged, a rhythm of immense power moving beneath us, sending small sprays of sand over our boots. Then, unexpectedly, a pulse echoed under my feet, a pulse that was not mine. Something else, something enormous and sentient, had joined our fearful circle, and its presence distorted every plan of movement we had devised. The terror was electric, a mental pressure on every nerve. I had to maintain calm, to remain a still target. But awareness of the other heartbeat under the sand made every second stretch into an eternity. I realized the predator anticipated not just movement, but emotional intent. It reacted before a scream could escape, before a gasp fully formed. I could almost see its intelligence as it read the trembling of the crew, turning instinct into a preternatural hunter. Control over my own pulse became the only shield, each deliberate breath a fragile barrier against annihilation. I urged the crew to mimic my stillness, to slow their internal rhythms. Some succeeded, some did not. Each failure sent new tremors rippling toward us, escalating the predator's aggression. Then a violent surge rose in the sand, a serpent-shaped outline surfacing, pulsating with hundreds of synchronized tremors, the echo of a colossal, heartbeat-driven body. Its movements were both smooth and terrifying, revealing a scale of subterranean intelligence we had underestimated. Every ripple felt like a probe, mapping our fear. We were trapped, bound by our own biology. Panic fed it, hesitation guided it, and yet stillness offered the faintest hope. Each second of control felt precarious, like walking a tightrope over a pit that could swallow us whole. I understood finally. Survival would demand mastery over both fear and rhythm, not just cunning or strength. The night was a symphony of silent terror. I moved with painstaking slowness, pausing my heartbeat at intervals, each stop a deliberate strategy. The predator's rhythm matched ours, probing every variation, and I had to time each step with calculated precision. The desert itself seemed to hold its breath with us. I guided those still with me toward safety. A path cleared, not by speed but by deliberate absence of movement. A corridor of controlled pulses. Around us, the sand rose and fell like liquid under an unseen force, each ripple an echo of suppressed fear, the predators searching for any pulse that betrayed life. Some crew members did not survive this test, their rhythms lost, swallowed silently by the sand. At last, I reached the edge of the dunes. Behind me, the predator's search persisted, but the diminished pulses allowed me to retreat. Each cautious step was a negotiation with my own body, a conversation between control and instinct. The desert returned to silence once I was a sufficient distance away, the vast dunes hiding the heartbeat-sensitive hunter beneath its blanket of sand. I left a recorder running as a precaution, a witness to what had transpired and to serve as a warning. My journal entries captured every strategic pause, every slowed heartbeat, every moment when survival depended on stillness. The desert was vast, unknowable, and I had glimpsed the predator that lives in rhythm beneath the dunes. If you hear the sand pulse, stop your heart. Do not move.